All right, it looks like everybody is in the meeting. Uh, just by way of introduction, my name is Colin Johnston. I'm here from the Ontario Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. The fine folks from Durham Region have invited us and asked us to run through just a bit of a high-level overview of municipal elections, the role of city councilors or town councilors, and the process of a municipal election. With me tonight are Bridget Foster and David Bardwaj, also from the ministry. All right, before we get started, just a disclaimer right off the top. These slides are meant to be a summary of some of the sections of the Act and should not be relied on for legal or official purposes. And I really want to stress that we are not lawyers. And if you have questions, you should consult the legislation and seek legal advice when necessary. We'll not be able to cover every aspect of the municipal election process, but we hope that this provides you with a better understanding of the process at the legislative level and improves your comfort level. There will be some aspects of municipal election that differ from municipality to municipality, even just within Durham region itself. So you may want to contact your local clerk for specific advice. Those things can include signed bylaws, use of municipal resources, the specifics of registering yourself as a candidate. And also, finally, congratulations for taking interest in your community and in local government, especially, whether you're interested in serving on a municipal council or possibly a school board, or even just registering as a third-party advertiser. A brief overview. This slide contains some of the topics we want to cover during this session. We'll include the roles of elected members of council, heads of council, and municipal staff, as well as the role of school board trustees. I do know there is kind of some speculation of the role of trustees going forward, but we're going to speak to the legislation as it currently exists. We'll also talk about the nomination process and how a candidate withdraws a nomination, what happens if a candidate files a nomination and then changes their mind about which office they may want to run for. We'll cover some key dates, who is eligible to run for a municipal office and who is not. We'll touch on general campaign rules and election finances, including campaign contribution limits, spending limits, campaign expenses, borrowing, and what expenses are exempt from the spending limit. We'll also talk about compliance audits initiated via application, penalties, general information about the voters list and rules about proxy voting, the role and rights of scrutineers at the poll, recounts, and also some resources provided by the ministry. All right, so the roles and responsibilities of elected officials and staff. So first off, congratulations. You're interested in running for office. Local government is the level of government that's closest to the people and is most responsive to the needs of the community. What you would quickly find out as a councillor is people really care when the garbage collection is missed. The larger questions about a provincial budget may not be top of mind, but when the garbage truck misses your house, you'll hear about it. Perhaps you've always wanted to pursue a role in politics. You might want to make a difference in your community. You might be upset or unhappy with some decisions made in your municipality, or perhaps you just have a passion for politics. Regardless, it's a 4-year commitment that will be filled with challenges, excitements, disappointment, hard work, and a great deal of satisfaction. Ontario's municipal governments deliver local services, while the province, that's us, establishes the legislative and policy framework. The government sets standards for many local services, such as land use planning, building regulation, and social housing, and the province provides funding to municipalities for some of these services. The ministry also works in partnership with the municipal sector to support efficient and responsive local governments that are sustainable and investment ready. Local government is a challenging environment with high expectations and limited resources. You'll often be expected to do more with less, and you'll expect your staff to do more with less as well. There's a limited, you can also find that there's a limited a limited understanding of roles amongst the general public when it comes to council and staff. For example, you work as a part of a council. There's no individual councillor that gets to make the rules on their own. Government's not like any other business. You can't always make everyone happy, so council must make difficult decisions in the best interests of the municipality. Before we get into an overview of the Municipal Elections Act, we wanted to provide a brief summary of the role of elected officials and the role of staff. Please note that the information about the roles of council and staff accountability and transparency can also be found in the Councillor's Guide on the ministry's website. Just a note about the Councillor's Guide, we'll reference it a lot throughout the presentation, as well as some specific forms. Right now, the forms and the guides that are online are still the 2022 versions. We expect the updated versions to be available at the beginning of April, but I can't give you a specific date at this time. We will be notifying the clerks of the various municipalities when those materials are available, and I believe they will be communicating it out to their communities. These guides are excellent tools that can provide a lot more information about how municipalities operate and how council and staff can work together in the best interest of the municipality. Also, another disclaimer, this is a long presentation, so please bear with us as we go forward. Section 2 of the Municipal Act stipulates that municipalities are created by the province to be responsible and accountable governments with respect to matters within their jurisdiction. And each municipality is given powers and duties under the Municipal Act and other pieces of legislation for the purpose of providing good government. The Municipal Act is a legislative framework for municipalities which seeks to balance local autonomy and flexibility with accountability and transparency. The key to any organization, whether it's government, business, industry, or even a local service club, is for everybody to understand their roles and relationships. In the next few slides, we'll touch on the role of the mayor, the mayor's role as chief executive officer, and the role of council, as well as the role of municipal staff, which are all key to effective and efficient local government. Just another kind of disclaimer, sometimes we'll use the term head of council. That's what you'll see in the Municipal Act, but it's also interchangeable with mayor. Some communities refer to their head of council as a warden, but for these purposes, we'll go with mayor. Other examples of other acts you might need to be familiar with are the Planning Act, the Municipal Elections Act, the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, and there are other pieces of legislation and other acts that have sections that apply to municipalities. And again, all of this legislation is available online. If you just throw it into Google, Ontario Municipal Act, it'll pop right up for you. The role of the head of council. The role of the head of council is to act as a leader. The head of council is the chair of meetings and generally the public face of a municipality. Although the legislation refers to the head of council as the chief executive officer of a municipality, it might be a bit confusing to people with a business background, as the head of council actually has few powers that can be exercised independently of the rest of council, except where specifically delegated in the cases of emergency or in the context of procedural matters during a council meeting. The head of council has no greater power than any other individual member of council. However, there are 216 municipalities, including, I believe, all of Durham, that are subject to the strong mayor framework. These are municipalities where the heads of council have been given authority to make certain decisions. These will be covered in greater detail in the next few slides. In some municipalities, the head of council has strong mayor powers. These additional strong mayor powers and duties apply to the heads of council in any designated municipality, regardless of whether they are called a mayor or other terms such as a warden. These additional powers and duties for heads of council apply only to the designated municipalities, and a full list of which can be found in Ontario Regulation 530/22. The City of Toronto is also given these powers and duties. Some strong mayor powers are related to provincial priorities, which are also identified in regulation under the Municipal Act. Those priorities are building 1.5 million new residential units by December 31st, 2031. and constructing and maintaining infrastructures to support housing, including transit, roads, utilities, and servicing. Again, here's a summary of the specific powers and duties. I will not read them all out to you, but they are there for you to see. Some of these powers can be delegated by the head of council. The ones on this list are designated with a single asterisk. Some powers relate specifically to prescribe provincial priorities, which are the ones we discussed in the previous slide, and those are marked with a double asterisk. It is worth mentioning that the head of council in a strong mayor municipality is subject to existing accountability and transparency rules, as well as certain additional rules. Generally, when the head of council uses their strong mayor powers or duties, they are required to provide written documentation to the municipal clerk and members of council by the next business day. They must also make this written documentation available to the public. You'll find that most municipalities have these on a dedicated webpage. Written documentation requirements vary with respect to some of the powers and duties, such as the use of vetoes, aspects of the budget process, and the power to direct staff. Implementation of the strong mayor framework is a local matter. It's up to the head of council to decide how they wish to implement the powers and the framework in accordance with the legislation and associated regulations. Please note that the decision about when and where to seek legal opinion is unique for every head of council in local circumstance or situation. In practice, this means that each strong mayor municipality may adopt local processes and procedures that best respond to the municipality's local needs and circumstances. For example, the head of council and the municipality may work together to establish local processes for council to provide input and seek public input in relation to a strong mayor budget, which is now a responsibility of the strong mayor to introduce. The next few slides will provide a bit more information on each of the roles of council as described in the Councillor's Guide, again, available online. So the representative role. In your role as a representative, a councillor was elected by their constituents to represent their views when dealing with issues that come before council. However, your constituents may have views and opinions that differ from yours, and you cannot represent all of them at the same time. I like to joke that if you go to municipal council meeting and there's 7 people there, you'll get 7 different views on the right way forward. For many issues, you'll have to consider a variety of opposing interests and make decisions that will not be popular with everyone. You should use your judgment and decide based on the best interests of the municipality as a whole. And I have to stress that a councillor is acting on the interests of the whole municipality, not just their specific ward. A councillor should make decisions that support the collective well-being of the municipality, balancing diverse needs and long-term interests. In practice, there's no single correct approach to the representative role, and on many issues you may find that you fall somewhere between 2 different viewpoints. Be sure to familiarize yourself with the policies or protocols that your municipality may have in place regarding the handling of complaints and citizen inquiries. Although you may want to find some way of helping constituents, remember to consult your municipal staff. Throughout Durham, we're blessed with expert staff that have been around for a long time. And I believe all of these municipalities already have a complaint policy, but if not, council may want to consider adopting one. Furthermore, there may be circumstances where decisions are made by designated staff that operate at arm's length from municipality and where it could be inappropriate for elected officials to interfere or be seen to be interfering. Examples of this could include decisions made by a fire chief, the chief building official, or the medical officer of health. A councillor who has made promises that cannot be kept may lose credibility with their citizens and strain working relationships with staff. So again, be careful of to do your research beforehand to understand what council can and cannot do, and what an individual councillor can and cannot do by themselves. As I mentioned before, each individual council member has 1 vote when making decisions. Every member of council should vote on matters in the best interest of the municipality as a whole, and every member should respect each other's points of view during and after debating an issue at the council table. Once a decision is made by council, it is a decision of the municipality, and staff are required to carry out and implement that decision. The role of council, the policymaking role. Some council decisions are routine. Others establish general principles to help guide future actions. Those are often what we would refer to as policy decisions. Some policies can be specific, such as a bylaw requiring dogs to be kept on leash in public areas. Others can be broader and more general, such as the approval of an official plan that covers zoning for a whole municipality. How is policy made? I can take a look at the slide here. We kind of start at 1, go to 4, down to 5, over to 8, and then repeat the process again. The Counselor's Guide does provide a lot of detail on the policy-making process, but I'll provide a bit of a high-level overview. Start by identifying the issue. As council, you'd want to agree what the issues are and what your objectives are as a group. Council would then direct staff to do research and issue further. To research an issue further and identify recommended options to council. There may be the need to consult with the public and consider their feedback. Council will then review staff's information and consider other factors such as the demands on time to implement the policy, cost implications, and a host of other concerns. Council makes a decision on the best course of action and adopts the policy. From there, staff is directed to implement the policy. After the policy is implemented, council would work with staff to evaluate the policy and make any amendments that may be required. And that all sounds great on paper, but in practice, policymaking is sometimes less orderly than what appears on the slide. And that could be because of various factors. Oftentimes, there is a rapidly changing environment. The issue you're facing could be complex or it could be difficult to single out problems that require more immediate attention. There could be differing and sometimes strongly held views by stakeholders and members of the public. There could be a lack of time to identify all possible alternatives and conduct detailed research and analysis. There could be legal and financial implications limiting what council may do. The implementation of the policy, along with the establishment of monitoring and evaluation mechanisms, can be complex. So to recap, council is the primary policy-making body of the municipality, while administrative staff is responsible for carrying out council's policy decisions. The two roles are distinct, but there can be much overlap. Although staff is responsible for implementing a policy, council may wish to develop appropriate reporting mechanisms to help ensure that the policies are being carried out as intended and as effectively as possible, and so that council can follow the implementation progress. The stewardship role. Council's objectives are to ensure the municipality's financial and administrative resources are being used as efficiently as possible. There's a fine line between council's overall stewardship of the municipality and the administration's management of day-to-day activities. Generally, council monitors the implementation of approved policies and programs, with the practical aspects of its implementation and administration are staff responsibility. And I'll go back to a bylaw requiring dogs to be on leash. It's a really black and white example where council would adopt the policy, but it would be staff that are targeting specific enforcement. So essentially, the day-to-day operations of the municipality are left up to staff. To be effective in the stewardship role, council may wish to have a process in place to help ensure that policies adopted by council are being implemented, staff are administrating services and programs as council intended, rules and regulations are being applied correctly and consistently, funds are being spent only as authorized, and the municipality's resources, whether they be financial or otherwise, are being used as appropriately and efficiently as possible. Establishing and following such policies and guidelines helps council leave the day-to-day details of staff to manage, and council is freer to deal with the exceptional situations, ensure that policies are current, and listen to issues being raised by the public to represent the broader community interest. Before council can monitor and measure the municipality's administration effectiveness and efficiency, it may wish to become familiar with the policies currently in place. With input from municipal staff, council can determine whether the policies are functioning well and or if changes are necessary. Role of the Chief Administrative Officer. And I'll often refer to the Chief Administrative Officer as the CAO. Section 229 of the Municipal Act states that a municipality may appoint a Chief Administrative Officer who shall be responsible for exercising general control and management of the affairs of the municipality. for the purpose of ensuring the efficient and effective operation of the municipality and performing such other duties as are assigned by the municipality. What that means in practice is the function of the CAO is generally akin to the role of a chief operating officer in a business environment. The CAO is responsible for the general control and management of the day-to-day operations of the municipality, which may include developing and implementing appropriate internal administrative practices and procedures to ensure the effective, efficient, and accountable operation of the municipality. To help understand the role of the CAO in a municipality, picture an hourglass where the top of the hourglass is council, the bottom of the hourglass is city staff, members of the public service, and the CAO is in the middle, the smallest part where the sand of an hourglass flows through. So if council wants to give direction to a specific department, the communication would flow through the CAO, who would then issue it out to the department. Likewise, if a department wants to present information to council, they would report up through the CAO, who would then report to council at a committee or council meeting. The role of officers and staff, also outlined in section 227, excuse me, of the Municipal Act. A key feature of effective and efficient council is a well-developed understanding of the role between council and staff and the role of each party. The relationship between council staff and the role of each party. The Councillor's Guide provides a list of ways that council members can assist staff to meet council expectations. Some examples include providing clear policy decisions, directions and expectations, adopting policies that complement and reinforce staff efforts, consulting with staff before deciding on policies, and being prepared for council meetings. In turn, staff should provide well-organized agendas with supporting material, provide sufficient, timely information and analysis to make council's decision-making easier, notify council of changes to legislation and programs, provide advice on policy, including options and recommended actions, identifying the costs and benefits for the community in human and financial terms, notifying council immediately of any unintended or unexpected impacts of policy decisions, implementing council decisions effectively and efficiently and as professionally as possible. As you may know, there are some municipal staff positions that have statutory obligations. These include the clerk, treasurer, chief building official, and fire chief. And it's important that council not interfere with the statutory obligations of those roles. For example, a clerk and treasurer positions have statutory duties or responsibilities assigned to them in the Municipal Act and other pieces of legislation. The building code would define the statutory duties for the chief building official, and the Fire Prevention and Protection Act would define the statutory duties of the fire chief. So I should mention that I believe the chat is open for questions. If you type them in, we can get to them at the end of our presentation. Council staff relationships and roles. The Councillor's Guide, again, provides some useful information on how council and staff can work together. And this slides a brief, very high-level overview of the relationship. Council and their administration, Councils and their administration have different roles within the municipality, but the roles have common goals and purposes. In general, it is the role of the elected council to represent the community and set direction and policy for the municipality, and it is the role of staff to manage people and resources to achieve council's vision. Council generally sets the policy direction for the municipality, and staff provides the research and expert advice to help council in its decision-making process. Staff and council rely on one another to move a municipality forward, and both staff and council provide leadership. Council provides political leadership, while administration provides leadership to the organization. The relationship between staff and council is interconnected, and it is important for council members and staff to respect one another's roles so that they can serve the public in an effective and efficient manner. Municipalities are required to adopt a policy on the relationship between members of council and municipal staff, and each municipality in Durham has one. And the municipalities have the flexibility to determine the content of those policies. Accountability and transparency. This is covered in Section 5.1 of the Municipal Act. Ontario municipalities and members of council operate under a legislated accountability and transparency framework that includes rules for the municipality and rules for members of council and local boards. Ensuring accountability and transparency is one of council's roles under Section 224 of the Municipal Act, and it is a priority in maintaining public trust. Councillors are, of course, accountable to the public as elected officials. However, it is important that procedures and policies are clearly set out and accessible, and that the day-to-day operations of the municipality are transparent. And this slide outlines policies that council are required to adopt. Codes of conduct are usually set out and codes of conduct usually set out expectations and standards for councillor conduct. Codes may help prevent ethical conflicts and help in the resolution, serve as a basis for council orientation and training, and serve as a reference throughout the operation of a council's term. With the growing importance of accountability and integrity, more municipalities have adopted codes of conduct for members of council and certain local boards as well. Some have also adopted other procedures, rules, and policy governing the ethical behavior of those members. Municipalities are required to establish codes of conduct for members of council and certain local boards, which must include certain subject matters. These include gifts, benefits, and hospitality, respectful conduct, including towards officers and employees of the municipality or of local boards, confidential information, and the use of municipal or local board property and equipment. Also required under the Municipal Act since 2019 is municipalities are required to ensure that the public has access to an integrity commissioner. The integrity commissioner's role is to perform in an independent manner the functions assigned by council with respect to applying local codes of conduct for members of council and boards, applying local procedures, rules, and policies governing the ethical behavior of members, applying certain Municipal Conflict of Interest Act rules to members, requests for advice from members in council on how those members of council would meet their obligations under the local code of conduct, as well as local procedures and the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Integrity commissioners also provide educational information to the public, the municipality and members of council, and certain local boards. The commissioner's function also includes conducting inquiries into requests from council or a local board, a member of council or a board, or a member of the public about whether a member of council or a local board has contravened the applicable code of conduct. There is flexibility in how a municipality provides for the responsibilities of an integrity commissioner. A municipality could consider possibilities such as appointing its own integrity commissioner, whether on staff or contracted, appointing an integrity commissioner and assigning some of the mandatory responsibilities to that commissioner and making arrangements for the remaining responsibilities to be provided by a commissioner of another municipality. Municipalities can also share integrity commissioner services and make arrangements for all of the mandatory integrity commissioner responsibilities to be provided by a commissioner of another municipality. So again, that was a mouthful, but different options, different avenues to provide those services. Other accountability officers that a municipality may have include a municipal ombudsman, which would investigate in an independent manner decisions and recommendations made and actions done or omitted during the course of an administration. Local boards as well. The municipal ombudsman is a separate office from the Ontario Ombudsman, who also has roles with respect to municipalities. Just a brief note, I don't believe any Durham municipalities have an ombudsman on staff of their own. I know the City of Toronto does, which is something to keep in mind. A municipality may also have an Auditor General who would conduct investigations and help a council hold itself accountable for the quality and stewardship of public funds, making sure they achieve value for money. Lobbyist Register is an independent office that performs in an independent manner, functions with respect to the lobbyist registry, such as establishing a code of conduct for lobbyists or prohibiting former public office holders from lobbying for a specified time period. And they may also have a closed meeting investigator, again, to help ensure councils are abiding by the required transparency rules. It is important to know that these are not required accountability officers for municipality, but municipalities do have the option of appointing them. The Ontario Ombudsman is a separate role, which has responsibilities in respect to municipalities. The role builds on the local accountability and transparency framework in the Municipal Act. This role is in addition to the Ontario Ombudsman's role as the default meeting investigator for municipalities that have not appointed a local meeting investigator. The Ontario Ombudsman may investigate municipalities when a complaint is received or on the Ombudsman's own initiative. Although the Ontario Ombudsman may investigate, they cannot compel a municipality to take action. The Ombudsman simply makes recommendations to council, and the municipality is part of the report. It is up to the municipality whether and how to address any recommendations made by the Ombudsman. Privacy and confidentiality. Personal privacy and other confidential issues are an important practical and legal consideration for both municipal councils and staff. The Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act is the primary statute for privacy and confidentiality. It sets out rules for collection, use, and disclosure of personal information. According to these rules, councillors and staff, in most circumstances, protect personal privacy and only collect, use, and disclose personal information in accordance with those rules. For example, depending on the circumstances, councillors and staff may or may not be authorized to obtain personal information in the course of their duties. This might mean that at times, councillors could not obtain this kind of information from staff. Municipal freedom of information legislation also regulates confidential information of other kinds, in addition to personal information. Other laws, including local bylaws, also regulate personal and other kinds of confidential information. Councillors who may have received personal or other confidential information in the course of their duties will have related responsibilities such as protecting and safeguarding that information. Councillors may wish to check with their municipal staff about appropriate measures and the municipality's best practices. For example, this could include providing for the physical security of records to prevent authorized disclosure or loss of confidential information. Okay, and we'll go quickly over to the role of school board trustees. The Education Act creates 4 different kinds of school boards. You can see them on the slide there, include English language, public and separate school boards, as well as French language, public and separate school boards. School trustees are members of the school board. They are locally elected representatives of the public, and they are the community's advocate for public education. Only the board, not an individual trustee, has the authority to make decisions or take action. A trustee is often the first point of contact for parents and community members who have questions or concerns about their local school. If you have questions about the roles or time commitments and duties of a trustee, please consider contacting your school board directly. The role of a school board trustee is to establish policy direction, participate in making decisions that benefit the entire school board while representing the interests of constituents. School board trustees are accountable to their constituents, the Ministry of Education, as well as families. And again, I do not believe any boards in the Durham region are under ministry supervision. In cases where they are, the role of a trustee is essentially suspended while the boards are under supervision and those responsibilities are transferred to the Ministry of Education. Moving on to eligibility rules. You must be an eligible elector, which means you must be able to vote. So the list above is a list that shows voter eligibility as well as eligibility to run and hold office. You can only be nominated if on the specific day you're nominated, you are qualified to hold that office under the Municipal Act and are not ineligible under the Municipal Elections Act or any other act or otherwise prohibited by law to be nominated or hold office. Section 30 of the Municipal Elections Act, the MEA, states that a person shall not be considered an employee for this section by reason only of being a volunteer firefighter as defined by the Fire Protection and Prevention Act. That essentially means that volunteer firefighters are not disqualified for running for council. If a municipal employee wishes to run for office on that municipality's council, they must take a leave of absence before filing the nomination form. Section 30.4 of the MEA governs that if elected, he or she shall be deemed to have resigned from their employment immediately before making the declaration of office. So essentially, if you're a municipal employee, you can't just go on a sabbatical, serve for 4 years, you have to resign your position. An employee of the municipality who wants to run for an office in a different municipality does not have to take a leave of absence or resign, but they should check with their employer to make sure there aren't any policies that could be affecting them. School board trustees and eligibility. Again, if you have specific questions, please direct them to your local school board. One important distinction, which is different between trustees and candidates for council, is if you're an employee of any school board and you wish to run for a position in any other school board, you still must take a leave of absence, whether it's your own board or a different one. The following people are disqualified. You can see on the right side there from being elected as a school board trustee. The nomination process. The first day for filing nominations is rapidly approaching. It is May 1st, 2026. Nomination day is the last day in time for filing nominations for the 2026 election. And this year, it will be on Friday, August 21st, 2026 by 2 p.m. If you wish to withdraw a nomination, local election policies, and this may differ based on where in Durham you live, may state that a candidate must personally attend the clerk's office to withdraw their candidacy. If, for example, a candidate is in the hospital or incapacitated, this may not be feasible. And in those cases, the clerk will make arrangements if you reach out to them. If a candidate withdraws a nomination, they are still required to file a campaign financial statement covering all of the financial transactions made during the campaign. If you haven't spent any money or raised any funds, you just click a box on the form, sign it, and it's complete. If a nomination is withdrawn, the candidate is entitled to a refund of their nomination filing fee only after they file their financial or auditor statements, and that they're filed by the required deadline. Continuing on with the nomination process, starting on May 1st until the close of business on August 21st, 2016, nominees can be submitted to the clerk from anyone who meets the eligibility criteria to run for office. Candidates must complete Form 1, which is a nomination paper, and submit it to the clerk along with the applicable nomination fee. And just a reminder here that the forms we have online right now are still the 2022 forms. Please wait before starting to collect your nominations until the 2026 forms are online, hopefully in the next week or so, beginning of April. The filing fee is $200 for anyone running for the head of council and $100 for all other offices. The clerk must be satisfied that you're eligible to run in order to certify your nomination. The clerk can also ask you to show identification or fill out additional forms to prove you're eligible to run for that particular office. The nomination form must also have an original signature. If your nomination is not certified by the clerk, your name will not appear on the ballot. Important to note that if your municipality has a ward system, as long as you're eligible to vote in that particular municipality, you may run in any ward. You don't have to run in the ward where you live, but you will not be able to obviously vote for yourself, as you must reside in the ward you you can only vote in the ward with which you resign. So if I live in Ward 1, but I'm running in Ward 2, unfortunately, I cannot vote for myself. In addition to the legislative requirements, each municipal clerk may establish their own local processes and procedures related to submitting a nomination. So please reach out to your local clerk so you understand the process in that municipality. And we have, at the end of This deck will have a contact information for the various election offices in all of the Durham region municipalities. Electronic filing. The use of electronic filing for candidates or third-party advertisers is at the clerk's discretion. So not some municipalities do it, some municipalities don't. Again, reach out to your clerk to determine if you are able to file electronically. Councils do not have the authority to order a clerk to use electronic filing. It's at the clerk's discretion and their opinion of how to best run the election. If a clerk does permit electronic filing for third-party advertisers, there may be limits and conditions with respect to the electronic filing. This allows the clerk to ensure that all of the requirements of the nomination have been met. So that includes filing fees, endorsement signatures, and so forth, before the candidate or the third party's advertiser's campaign period begins. Even if a clerk permits electronic filing, all campaign documents require original signatures, including the signatures endorsing a candidate's nomination where applicable. If electronic filing is permitted, it is responsibility of the candidate or third-party advertiser to maintain these original records until after the next regular election. The first day that a candidate may file a nomination or that a third-party advertiser may register is May 1st, 2026. If along the way you decide you wish to run for a different office, that's fine, but there are some steps you have to take. Obviously, you can only run for one office at a time. If a candidate files a second nomination, the first nomination is deemed to be withdrawn, whether that's in whichever municipality it is. If a candidate decides to run for another office and they've already collected the 25 endorsement signatures, they can use those endorsements for the other office. If a candidate decides to run for a different office in the same council or school board, and both positions are elected at large, so that means the whole municipality, everything from the first campaign is transferred to the second campaign, and you only need to file one financial statement. If the candidate decides to run for a different office in the same council or school board, and both offices are elected by wards, this means that you're essentially running two separate campaigns. They must be kept separate, and two financial statements must be filed. So you would have to file for the first campaign from which you withdrew, as well as the second campaign, which is the active one. Third-party advertisers. Third-party advertiser is an individual, corporation, trade union that is registered in the municipality to promote, support, or oppose a candidate or a yes or no question on the ballot. Third-party advertisements are just advertisements affecting or concerning the same things. Eligibility for third-party advertisers and who is ineligible. Only the following people or entities are eligible to file a notice of third-party advertiser registration: an individual who is normally a resident in Ontario, a corporation that carries on business in Ontario, or a trade union that holds bargaining rights for employees in Ontario. The following persons or entities are not eligible to file a notice of registration. This includes a candidate whose nomination has been filed under Section 33 of the Municipal Elections Act, a federal political party registered under the Canada Elections Act, a provincial political party, a constituency association or registered candidate, or a leadership contestant registered under the Election Finances Act, the Crown and Right of Canada or Ontario, a municipality or a local board, all ineligible, and any group or association that is not a corporation. So if you're not incorporated, if it's a group of friends that play hockey on Thursday night, not eligible to be a third-party advertiser unless they have incorporated. The nomination process. To be nominated, you require 25 nomination signatures on Form 2. Again, they will be online at the beginning of April. For school board trustees, candidates for school board trustee, there is no requirement for the 25 signatures. A nominator can nominate more than one candidate and are not required to vote for the candidate. Nominators must meet the eligibility requirements of a municipal elector at the time they signed the nomination form. In a ward system, the nominator can be anyone who is eligible to vote in the municipality, not just the specific ward. Both the clerk and the candidate are entitled to rely upon the information provided by the nominator, so you don't have to do background checks on anybody that's nominating you. If the nominator does not meet the eligibility requirements when they sign the document, then they could face penalties under the Municipal Elections Act. Just a tip here, and I'd like to stress this. If a candidate wishes, they can provide more than 25 signatures. And this is great because if you only have 25 and you go to submit your nomination to the clerk and the clerk notices that one of those 25 missed a section under, didn't fill out a section on the nomination form, they wouldn't be able to accept that. You don't want to have to go back out and find another nominator or get that nominator to fill anything in. If you bring in 30, 35, if there's an issue with one of them, you still have everybody else. And please remember to, even if you're filing electronically in a municipality, all of those nominations have to have an original signature, and you have to keep those on hand until the next election. Registration for third-party advertisers. Again, there's no registration fee for third-party advertisers. Third-party advertisers would register with the clerk of the local municipality. And once registered, they may advertise in support or in opposition to any candidate being elected by voters in that municipality. That could include council candidates, trustees, or directly elected upper tier candidates. Any person or entity may advertise regarding any issue related to elections in that municipality without registering. To advertise regarding questions on the ballot will require registration as a third-party advertiser. Third-party advertising is geographically based and is structured around the concept of influencing a specific set of voters in a specific location. And this is important. So if you are considering being a third-party advertiser and you want to influence issues throughout the entirety of Durham region, or if you want to influence something in the school board, you're required to register in each individual municipality and essentially run a campaign in each of those municipalities. So if you're looking at 3 municipalities, that requires 3 separate campaigns. Last page for me, if you wish to withdraw as a third-party advertiser, you may do so. Again, ensuring that you do so before Friday, October 23rd, 2026 during clerk's office hours. If you decide you want to be if you decide as a third-party advertiser you want to run as a candidate and you file a nomination, it automatically ends your third-party advertising campaign. And it is critical, and I cannot stress this enough, to keep the campaign finances and whatnot separate, so you don't run into any issues there. And I believe that is it. I will pass it over to Bridget to run you through campaign finances, which I'm sure everybody has a ton of questions about.
Okay. And just I know a couple of people have their hands up, but we'll get to your questions after I do my little session here. Okay, so campaign accounts are only required if the candidate or third-party advertiser raises or spends money. So for campaigns where no funds are raised or spent, there is no need for a campaign account. Third-party advertisers will generally need to follow the same rules for fundraising, campaign funds, and financial reporting as candidates for office. Municipalities must establish rules and procedures regarding the use of municipal or local board resources during the campaign period. This must be passed by May 1st in the year of the election. So this will encourage accountability and transparency. So ensure that you are aware of the municipality's policy in this regard. The practice of municipalities of providing candidate contact information on their website is not a contribution. Thanks. Contributions from the candidate and their spouse are considered to have come from the same person and count against the self-contribution limit. The rules for determining whether corporations are considered to be one contributor are clarified as the following. If one corporation controls the other directly or indirectly, then they are considered to be the same contributor. If the corporations are owned or controlled by the same person or groups of persons, either directly or indirectly, they are considered to be the same contributor. Next slide, thanks. So candidates and third-party advertisers cannot accept contributions from a federal political party, constituency association, or registered candidate in a federal election, a provincial political party, constituency association, or registered candidate or leadership contestant, federal or provincial government, a municipality, a school board, or a business or group that is not a corporation. So the value of services, we're still on that side, sorry, Colin. The value of services provided by volunteers is generally not considered to be a contribution. But if you have a professional, but if a professional, for example, an accountant or a lawyer, volunteers to provide services for which they would normally be paid, the market value of the service must be recorded as a contribution by the volunteer and then also as a campaign expense. So for example, if your accountant friend is typically paid $100 per hour and works 5 hours for you, you would document $500 as a contribution and $500 as an expense. Trade unions and corporations are not eligible to contribute to candidates' campaigns, although they can participate in the election as third-party advertisers or make contributions to third-party advertising campaigns. Next slide. So campaign contributions are monies, goods, or services given to a candidate for his or her election campaign. Cash contributions may only be accepted up to $25. Any contributions above must be made by check, money order, or a method clearly showing where the funds came from. Fundraising functions are events or activities held by or on behalf of a candidate for the primary purpose of raising money for the candidate's campaign. The price of admission to a fundraising function is a campaign contribution, and a receipt must be issued for the full amount. Receipts must be issued for every contribution and should contain the name and address of the contributor and the amount and the dates. Next slide. The limit on contributions to any one candidate or registered third-party advertiser is $1,200, with the aggregate limit being $5,000. So since candidates and third-party advertisers are required to inform contributors of contribution limits, you may want to include the limits on the receipts provided to the contributors. Next slide. So self-funding limits for municipal council candidates is based on the number of electors voting for the office, so to a maximum of $25,000 per candidate. This amount includes any contributions of goods, such as inventory from a previous campaign. So the formula for calculating the limit is $7,500 plus 20 cents per elector for head of council, and $5,000 plus 20 cents per elector for other council offices. So the highest self-funding limit that anyone can possibly have is $25. And if the formula works out to above the maximum of $25,000, they still get just the $25,000 limit. If the formula works out to less than $25,000, then you get whatever the formula works out to. Next slide. So candidates can open their bank account with their own funds, but the candidate cannot loan funds to his or her campaign to kickstart it with the intention of getting it all back. The only way that candidates can reclaim the startup amount is if there are leftover funds after the campaign period is over and prior to filing the financial statement. At this time, they have the opportunity to reclaim funds from a surplus. The loan is not considered to be a campaign income, and paying it back is not a campaign expense. But if you or your spouse guarantee the loan and the campaign does not repay all of it back, the remaining balance is considered to be a contribution. And in this case, you need to keep in mind the self-funding contribution limit. You cannot accept loans from family members or from any corporate accounts you have access to. The loan must come from a bank or other recognized lending institution in Ontario and must be directly put into the campaign account. Any interest that the campaign pays on loans is considered a campaign expense. Next slide. So section 88.19 of the Municipal Elections Act outlines what constitutes an expense. So examples of expenses are the replacement value of goods retained by the person, individual, corporation, or trade union from any previous election in the municipality and used in the current election, the value of contributions of goods and services, audit and accounting fees, interest on loans as identified under Section 88.17 of the Municipal Elections Act, the cost of holding fundraising functions, the cost of holding parties, and making other expressions of appreciation after the close of voting. For a candidate, expenses related to a recount or a proceeding under Section 83 of the Municipal Elections Act, which is in relation to controverted elections, expenses related to a compliance audit, expenses that are incurred by a candidate with a disability or a registered third party who is an individual with a disability and are directly related to the disability and would not have been incurred but for the election to which the expense relates. The cost of election campaign advertisements within the meaning of Section 88.3 or third-party advertisements as the case may be. So for greater certainty, the cost of holding fundraising functions does not include costs related to events or activities that are organized for such purposes as promoting public awareness of a candidate and at which the soliciting of contributions is incidental, or promotional materials in which soliciting of contributions is incidental. Next slide. So candidates and third-party advertisers should familiarize themselves with the campaign expense provisions and know what constitutes an expense under the spending limits. These can also be found in the candidate's guide. Like Colin mentioned, the existing ones are from 2022. It's still good information in there, but the new ones will be coming out shortly. Campaign expenses are costs that are incurred by the candidate or a person under the candidate's direction, such as a campaign manager, along with a third-party advertiser and their campaign. The nomination fee is a personal expense and not a campaign expense. Therefore, it should not be reported on your financial statement. Goods and services donated to the campaign are also expenses and must be reported. A receipt must be provided for fair market value. Only nominated persons and/or third-party advertisers can incur expenses during their campaign period, or persons acting under their direction during those periods. All expenses must be paid from your campaign bank account, and a receipt must be retained that shows what the expense was for. So if you are using a credit card to pay for the purchases, you should make sure to keep clear records showing that the expense on the credit card was reimbursed from your campaign account. All expenses must be reported in the relevant financial disclosure form to be filed with the clerk by the candidate or the third-party advertiser. So with respect to campaign inventory, if you ran in the last election and want to use leftover goods such as signs or office supplies, you have to determine the current market value of those goods today and record them as an expense in the current campaign. Also, if you end up with leftover inventory at the end of this campaign, it becomes your personal property. But if you want to store them and use for another election, any costs for storage are not considered campaign expenses. So spending limits are outlined in Regulation 101.97. The head of council spending limit is $7,500 plus 85 cents per elector. All other offices are $5,000 plus 85 cents per elector. The spending limit after voting day for parties, expressions of appreciation, gifts, etc., is 10% of the spending limit. The clerk's calculation of the spending limit is final. So the clerk will provide two calculations of a candidate's spending limit. One, the clerk will provide a preliminary estimate at the time of nomination for a candidate or registered third-party advertiser. The clerk calculates the spending limit based on the number of electors on the voters list as it existed on September 20th, 2022. The final spending limit is based on the voters list as it exists on September 20th, 2026. And will be provided to candidates and third-party advertisers on or before September 30th, 2026. So whichever number is higher is the spending limit, and the clerk's calculation is final. Candidates will be required to inform their contributors of the contribution limits. For example, how much a contributor can contribute to an individual candidate's campaign, being the $1,200, and the aggregate limit on contributions to any one council or local board election, which is the $5,000. So if a third-party advertiser has registered in more than one municipality, each registration is a separate campaign with its own spending limits. The campaign finance rules are generally the same for third-party advertisers as they are for candidates. For example, subject to similar contribution limits and have calculated spending limits. This includes financial filing requirements, requests for extensions, and records. Third-party advertisers are also required to ensure contributions and expenses are tracked and accounted for. Proper record retention, proper direction is provided to those incurring expenses or accepting contributions on their behalf, and that spending limits are adhered to. Next slide. So most expenses are subject to the spending limit. Those listed in this slide are not. Expenses related to fundraising functions are exempt from the campaign spending limit, but in order to qualify as a fundraising function, an event must have the raising of money as its primary purpose. Campaign events at which incidental fundraising takes place do not qualify as fundraising functions. Similarly, a brochure that's sent out promoting awareness of a candidate that contains contact information to make campaign contributions doesn't qualify as a fundraising function. Next slide. So for third-party advertisers, there's also two spending limits. One, the general spending limit, and then the second one being the limit related to parties and expressions of appreciation after the close of voting. Ontario Regulation 10197 provides the following formula for calculating third-party spending limits. That's $5,000 plus 5 cents per elector to a maximum of $25,000. The formula is used is based on the number of electors entitled to vote in an election in the municipality. The Municipal Elections Act also provides that the spending limit for parties and other expressions of appreciation after voting day be set at 10% of the general spending limit. This would be consistent with what we mentioned for the spending limit in place for candidates. Next slide. Okay, so campaign finance rules can be found in the sections noted on the slide from the Municipal Elections Act. This and the next several slides will walk you through the campaign finance rules. So as a candidate or third-party advertiser, it is important that you be fully aware of the responsibilities regarding election spending and accepting campaign contributions. You are recommended to familiarize yourself with the sections of the Municipal Elections Act noted on the slide, as well as the financial statements that you will be required to file. This will help guide you in organizing your records and how they have to be reported. You are required under the Municipal Elections Act to keep accurate records and open a campaign bank account if you are spending any money or accepting any contributions. Please note that a bank account is not required if a candidate or third-party advertiser does not receive nor spend any money. Next slide. So candidates and third-party advertisers are required to keep complete and accurate financial statements during the course of their campaign. All contributions and expenses are to be accounted for and disclosed by the candidate on the relevant prescribed financial form. All candidates and third-party advertisers are required to keep all campaign financial records until after the council in the 2030 election has been sworn in and takes office. These rules apply whether you are elected or not. The clerk must also keep all campaign finance records until after the 2030 council has been sworn in. Next slide. So store receipts in a secure place as they are valuable documents. Receipts must be signed by the candidate or his or her designate. It is good practice to have a receipt that is multi-part form, so for one for the contributor and one or more for the candidate's records. Receipts should be numbered in order. Open a bank account which provides monthly statements and canceled checks. Produce duplicate deposit slips for every deposit, listing the names of the contributors and the amounts received from each. Ensure a very good record is kept of all contributions, as sometimes a contributor makes numerous contributions and may exceed the $100 limit, where they will need to be identified within the financial statement in a separate section. There is a separate section on Form 4 that requires all contributors that contribute over $100 to be listed with their address. So it is recommended that candidates make contributors aware that any contributions that exceed the $100 will be identified within Form 4 with their address, and this information is made public. Maintain a petty cash fund to handle minor expenses and obtain invoices to support all payments from the fund. At any time, the cash on hand plus the total amount of invoices should equal the original amount of the petty cash fund. The fund can then be replenished periodically by a check drawn on the campaign account in an amount equal to the total amount of the invoices. So candidates and third-party advertisers may find it useful to look over Form 4, which is for candidates, and Form 8, which is for third-party advertisers, at the beginning of their campaign to give them an idea of what information will be needed to report on at the end of the campaign. Candidates and third-party advertisers are required to maintain certain campaign records, example, copies of advertisements, for public inspection for a period of 4 years. Next slide. It is recommended for candidates to contact their municipality to ask about bylaws related to signs and campaigning. Candidates and third-party advertisers cannot cause an election campaign advertisement to appear unless they provide the following information to the broadcaster or publisher in writing. This information is the name of the candidate or registered third-party advertiser, the name, business address, and telephone number of the individual who deals with the broadcaster or publisher under the direction of the candidate or registered third-party advertiser. The third-party advertiser must also include the name of the municipality where the third-party advertiser is registered. No broadcaster or publisher shall cause a campaign or third-party advertisement to appear unless this information has been provided to them. The period for third-party advertisements, as shown on the slide, is the period from when the rules for third-party advertisers applies. In 2026, that is from May 1st until the close of voting on voting day at 8 p.m. on October 26th. Please note that an election signed advertisement purchased by or under the direction of a candidate must identify the candidate on the sign or the advertisement. Next slide. So the broadcaster or publisher of a third party or candidate advertisement shall maintain records containing the following information for a period of 4 years after the date of the advertisement appears, and shall permit the public to inspect the records during normal business hours. The name of the candidate or registered third-party advertiser, the name, business address, and telephone number of the individual who deals with the broadcaster or publisher under the direction of the candidate or registered third-party advertiser, a copy of the advertisement or the means of reproducing it for inspection, a statement of the charge made for its appearance. Next slide. So Section 88.25 of the Municipal Elections Act states all candidates are required to file Form 4 with a clerk, regardless of how much or how little they spent or fundraised. The deadline to file your financial statement is Tuesday, March 30th, 2027, before 2 p.m. If you feel you cannot meet that deadline, you must apply to the courts for an extension prior to the March 30th deadline. If you filed a nomination form, you must file a Form 4. This form is required even if you withdrew your nomination or were acclaimed. If you register as a third-party advertiser, you must complete Form 8. A candidate may resubmit a financial statement to correct an error up until the filing deadline. The clerk is required to make public a report of which candidates filed financial statements and which did not. Next slide. Candidates can file their financial documents at any time after voting day until December 31st, 2026. Filing the financial statement ends the campaign period. This will make it easier for acclamations and campaigns where little or no expense is incurred. Third-party advertisers can close their campaign and file their financial statements after early withdrawal or at any time after voting day and up to December 31st, 2026. Clerks will be required to report whether candidates have met their financial filing obligation and publish that report on the municipal website or in another electronic form. This needs to be done by April 30th in the case of a regular election. The clerk must also, as soon as possible after April 30th, 2027, make a list of all registered third-party advertisers and indicate whether each filed the required financial statement and auditor's report. Clerks can determine the conditions for the electronic filing of financial statements. The appointment of an auditor by the candidate is mandatory if expenses or contributions exceed the $10,000. Auditors must be licensed under the Public Accounting Act 2004. So a recommendation that we have is if you feel you may meet the $10,000 threshold that would require you to obtain an auditor, please go and seek an auditor early. Some candidates in the last election struggled with securing an auditor. Note that financial statements are public documents. So the nomination fee is only refundable if the financial statement is filed on time. A candidate or third-party advertiser who misses the filing deadline may file within the 30-day grace period, provided a $500 late filing fee is paid to the municipality. This 30-day grace period would end on April 29th, 2027, which is 30 days from the financial statement due date, which is March 30th, 2027. A candidate who chooses to file within the 30-day grace period will be subject to both the $500 late filing fee as well as the loss of the nomination. So no, a candidate who chooses to file within the 30-day grace period will be subject to both the $500 late filing fee as well as the loss of their nomination refund. However, if the candidate is approved for an extension by the court, the candidate will get their nomination fee back. A candidate or third-party advertiser may resubmit a financial statement to correct an error up until the filing deadline. Next slide. So in filing the financial statement, a candidate or third-party advertiser with a campaign surplus must pay the entire amount to the clerk. Prior to paying over any surplus funds to the clerk, a candidate or a third-party advertiser is entitled to a refund of any contributions they or their spouse, if an individual, made to the campaign, but not to anyone else. The amount that may be refunded is the lesser of the amount of the relevant contribution or the amount of the surplus. So for example, that means if a candidate has $1,000 left over and they made a contribution to themselves of $500, they would repay themselves the $500 and the remaining $500 will be paid to the municipality. The clerk is required to place surplus monies in trust for use by the candidate if they need it for a compliance audit. The clerk is also required to place surplus monies in trust for use by the third-party advertiser if they need it for a compliance audit. If neither the candidate nor third-party advertiser requires the funds for these purposes, it becomes the property of the municipality or school board. Next slide. So this is we're going to talk about compliance audits. So every municipality must establish a compliance audit committee. Members of a compliance audit committee cannot be members of the council or school board, an employee, a candidate in the election, or a registered third-party advertiser. The clerk will review contributions and prepares a report for consideration by the compliance audit committee if a contributor appears to have exceeded any contribution limits. This process is related to reviewing contributions as reported on the financial statements and is not connected to the compliance audit process. If it is apparent to the clerk that a contributor has exceeded one or more of the contribution limits, the clerk would report this to the committee, which would meet to determine whether to proceed with legal action. The legislation does not specify what details are to be provided in the report to the committee. Electors entitled to vote in an election may apply for a compliance audit even if the candidate has not filed their financial statement. The application must be in writing and set out the electors' reasons for why they believe the Municipal Elections Act has been contravened. The application must be submitted to the municipal clerk or the secretary of the school board within 90 days of the filing deadline. The Compliance Audit Committee will consider the application and decide whether to retain an auditor to undertake a compliance audit of the candidate's financial statement. A person who does not want to or who is not able to apply for a compliance audit may decide to commence legal action on their own. A prosecution related to the 2026 election must be commenced on or before November 15th, 2030. Next slide. If the committee grants the application, It will appoint an auditor to conduct a compliance audit of the candidate's campaign finances. The auditor is entitled to have access to all of the financial records related to the campaign. The auditor will produce a report, which the candidate is entitled to receive as well. The Compliance Audit Committee will meet to consider the auditor's report if the report concludes that there is an apparent contravention of the Municipal Elections Act. The committee will decide whether to commence legal action. So the Compliance Audit Committee does not have any authority to set penalties. Only the court can decide if you have contravened the act, and if so, which penalties should apply. Next slide. So there are 3 contraventions of the Municipal Elections Act where penalties apply automatically. If you fail to file a financial statement by the end of the 30-day grace period, or fail to apply to the court before March 30th, 2027 for an extension by the filing deadline. If your financial statement shows that you exceeded your spending limit, or if you fail to turn over your surplus to the clerk when you file your financial statement. The penalty is that you forfeit your office if you won the election, and you become ineligible to run or be appointed to fill a vacancy until after the 2030 election. Next slide. If you are convicted of an offense, you may be subject to the following penalties: a fine of up to $25,000, ineligibility to vote or run in the next general election, up to 6 months in prison, forfeiture of your elected office if the judge finds that you committed the offense knowingly. So I previously indicated that if you were convicted of exceeding the spending limit, you automatically will lose your seat. In addition, you may also be fined the amount by which you exceeded the limit. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah. So Elections Ontario is a non-partisan office of the Legislative Assembly of Ontario, responsible for administering provincial elections, led by the Chief Electoral Officer. Elections Ontario is governed by the Elections Act and the Election Finances Act. Elections Ontario does not administer local elections, but they do have a role in playing in providing up-to-date voter list information to local partners. Since January 1st, 2024, the Chief Electoral Officer, or Elections Ontario, has taken over the responsibility of preparing voters lists from MPAC and will manage a permanent register of electors for both provincial and municipal elections. The voters list for each municipal election will be prepared using data from the permanent register of electors, the register, maintained by Elections Ontario. Elections Ontario works with local partners to provide them with the most up-to-date voters lists to support their elections. Voters across the province can update their information in the register for local and provincial elections by visiting registertovoteon.ca. Voters can confirm or add their information to the register. Next slide. So the voters list becomes a permanent or a public document on September 1st, 2026. As a candidate, you can request that the municipal clerk give you a part of the voters list that relates to the office that you are running for. This request must be made in writing. In order to receive the voters list from the municipal clerk, you must give the clerk a written acknowledgement of the following. You will only use the list for electoral purposes and not for commercial purposes. You are bound by the restrictions set out in the Municipal Elections Act relating to handling of the voters list. You will only share the list with others, such as campaign workers, after obtaining a similar written acknowledgement from them as well. Next slide. You are the only person who may share the voters list. If you have given someone a copy, they are not allowed to share it any further. You must keep track of who you have shared the voters list with. If you give someone a physical copy of the list, they must return that copy to you. If you share an electronic copy, they must destroy the copy and provide you with a written acknowledgement that the copy has been destroyed. You cannot keep copies of the voters list after your campaign had ended. On or before the day your campaign ends, you must destroy the copy of the voters list that you received from the clerk. Have any printed copies that you shared with other people returned to you and destroy them. Ensure you have received written acknowledgement from anyone who received an electronic copy of the list that the electronic copy has been destroyed. Next slide. So before you share the voters list with someone, You must obtain a written acknowledgement from that person. That written acknowledgement must confirm that they will only use the list for electoral purposes and not for commercial purposes. They will not share or give copies of the list to anyone else. If they receive a physical copy of the list, they will return the copy to you. If they receive an electronic copy of the list, they will destroy the copy and give you written confirmation that the electronic copy has been destroyed. The written acknowledgement should set out the dates by which people must return the physical copies or to give you the written confirmation that electronic copies have been destroyed. You must keep the records of the written acknowledgements that you have received until November 15th, 2030, when the next council or school board takes office. You must also keep any written confirmations that electronic copies of the list have been destroyed. Next slide. So there are a number of reasons why someone would appoint someone else to vote on their behalf, including maybe possibly an absence from the area or an illness. Section 44 of the Municipal Elections Act covers the issuance of proxy forms. No appointments for proxies are made until all nominations are closed. Clerk may designate a place and time for presentation of proxy voting applications and appointment forms for clerk's certification. Assignment of proxy vote is the responsibility of an eligible voter to appoint an identified eligible voter. An eligible proxy may exercise only one proxy vote unless the proxy is acting on behalf of a spouse, sibling, parent, child, grandparent, or grandchild. Proxy forms must be filled out completely before being signed and have original signatures. Please note that to appoint a voting proxy, you must fill out 2 copies of the appointment for voting proxy forms with original signatures. Please check with the municipal clerk if proxy voting is available, as municipalities that use alternative voting may not permit proxy voting. So scrutineers, so we're going to talk a little bit about scrutineers now. So only a candidate may appoint scrutineers to represent him or her during the voting and the counting of votes, including during a recount. Third-party advertisers cannot appoint scrutineers. In the traditional election where voting takes place at a poll, the deputy returning officer is in charge of the activity in the voting place, and they will ask the scrutineer to leave if the scrutineer is not complying with the legislation. Candidates or scrutineers should respect the deputy returning officer, respect that the deputy returning officer must ensure fairness, access, privacy, and security of the vote, and absolutely no campaigning within the voting place. This means scrutineers cannot enter the voting place wearing a pin or shirt with any reference to the candidate. A useful tip that we provide is to check with the clerk to see if a list of scrutineers' rights is being given to election staff at the poll. If so, use that list or prepare your own and hand it out to each of your scrutineers, a list of their rights, which are spelled out in section 47, subsection 5 of the Municipal Elections Act. And also to note, there are no age restrictions for scrutineers. So a recount is automatic if the vote is tied. Councils have the option of establishing policies prior to the election that also allow for an automatic recount. Council still retains the option to pass a resolution for a recount within 30 days after the clerk has declared the results of the election. An eligible elector can apply to the courts for a recount within 30 days of the clerk's declaration of the results. So the next slide covers some key dates that you want to be aware of. So voting day is Monday, October 26, 2026, between 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. unless reduced hours are set by the clerk for retirement homes and certain institutions, or the clerk decides to open voting places earlier than the 10 a.m. The campaign period, the time when a candidate can accept contributions and incur election expenses, runs from the date the nomination is submitted up until December 31st, 2026. The campaign period, the time the third-party advertiser can incur expenses, begins the date the registration is certified, the earliest being May 1st until December 31st, 2026. The deadline for filing of the campaign financial statement in the clerk's office is Tuesday, March 30th, 2026, no later than 2 p.m. All candidates and third-party advertisers must file this statement regardless of how much they spent or received in nominations. So this lists the resources that are available to you in order to be prepared for your campaign. You will want to be very familiar with the Municipal Elections Act, the Municipal Act, and the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Also in there, it does say 2022 election guides, and there's a link there, but that link will also take you to 2026 election guides when they become available. And that is it for our presentation.
Up here now is the contact information for Bridget and myself.
On behalf of the King election team, I would like to thank the Ministry of Municipal Affairs staff for their very informative presentation. I would now like to provide some specific information for those persons who may be considering filing their nomination with the Township of King for a council or school board position. The key dates to keep in mind for the upcoming municipal elections are May 1st, nominations open for those who wish to file a nomination. August 21st at 2:00 p.m. is the final day for submitting your nomination. There will be 3 in-person advance voting dates in October, and we are now introducing online voting for the Township of King for the first time, and there will be an online voting period in October. Online voting will be available only on advance voting dates during a specified period. On voting day, it will be in person only. The new term of council will begin on November 15th, and the council inauguration will be on November 23rd. The offices that you may submit your nomination forms for are the office of mayor, one councillor for each of wards 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and the offices of York Region District School Board Trustee, York Catholic District School Board Trustee, and the French and Public School Board Trustees. If you wish to file a nomination in the Township of King, nominations will be accepted in person by appointment only beginning on May the 1st, 2026 at the Municipal Centre located at 2585 King Road in King City, Ontario. Appointments are typically for 1 hour in duration and are scheduled during regular business hours. Nomination packages will be available on our website in early April. The exceptions are if you wish to file your nomination for a school board trustee. The York Region District School Board Trustee for King and Vaughan Ward 1 will be filed by the Township of King. The York Catholic District School Board Trustee for King, Witchard, Stouffville, and Aurora will be filed with the Town of Aurora. And the French and School Board Trustee nominations are yet to be determined which municipality will be accepting those filings. The requirements under the Municipal Elections Act to file your nomination include providing identification, which includes your name, qualifying King address, and signature, filing Form 1, your nomination paper, and filing Form 2, endorsement of nomination for council candidates only. The endorsement of nomination requires that you obtain 25 original endorsement signatures. It's highly recommended that you obtain more than 25 endorsement signatures on your Form 2. You will also be required to file your nomination filing fee. If you're running for a ward councillor, it's $100, or school board trustee, it's $200 for the office of mayor. Some helpful tips to consider before you file your nomination. Visit the Elections Ontario voter registration tool to check and update your voter information in advance to ensure that you are on the voters list. Review the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing's Candidates Guide for full rules, deadlines, and financial filing requirements. Also, please review the election information on the website where you intend to file. For the Township of King, That would be king.ca/elections. Election campaign signs may be placed starting on Monday, September 28, 2026. Candidates and campaign volunteers must ensure that they comply with King and York Region sign bylaw requirements. The election signage bylaws are enforced by King's Bylaw Services Division. Applications for election signs will be available on our website beginning the end of April, beginning of May. New for King in the 2026 municipal and school board election is the option to cast your ballot online in addition to in-person and the vote at home program options. Internet voting will be available 24 hours a day during the advance voting period in October. It will not be available on voting day. For further information regarding internet voting, please visit our website. To schedule an appointment to file your nomination, or if you have any questions, please contact myself, Suzanne Kudnick, Election Coordinator, at elections@king.ca. Thank you.